All right, assume the position. Look for spontaneous signals. I'm going to be talking about curing Graves' disease, and you'll probably be getting some. Stay open. You know, you got to stay open to guidance. If you've done lesson 1, you are now in the middle of being training yourself to follow a thread of signals to and beyond a negative medical test on Graves' disease. By responding to those signals, by interpreting the signals, staying open to them and interacting with the signals when they come. You know, I just realized if you found this through a search in YouTube on Graves' disease, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And when I said assume the position, you may have misconstrued that. It's this website. And to find all the segments to this movie, click on Graves' disease on that website. So, as I was saying, you need to have done lesson 1 before you watch this movie. And if you have, then you are in the middle of training yourself and being trained by me and the rest of us and the people who've cured Graves' disease and thousands of other people who've never had Graves' disease but who nonetheless have contributed to this training. You are in the middle of pulling yourself along this thread of signals. And the signal, the key signal, is a good feeling, or, you know, a series of different kinds of good feelings. Some of those include the disappearance of the physical symptoms of Graves' disease, in this case, which I noticed from listening and I've been in every Graves' disease cure show. It's been my honor to be present when people have cured Graves' disease and interact with them and share this, you know, this wonderful, you know, curing with them, you know, of the disease. And I noticed their symptoms disappear, like, you know, sometimes within a few minutes. So those are another kind of signal. But the key signal is just the shift that you have into a state of clarity, calmness, self-confidence, courage, power, love, and so on. You know, the what we call the calm, clear place. That's the signal that you're curing the disease. And as that continues to last, you can sort of assume that your level of hosting the disease is dropping. Now, see, the bad news here, I'll just, you know, guess I'm reiterating some things that I said in lesson 1, but I think you, especially with Graves' disease, you need to hear this again, is that, first of all, I've come to the conclusion from observing the people I've seen cure Graves' disease that you need a series of negative medical tests. Number 1. And after a while, you know, you're going to get sick of getting medical tests, but you'll probably still be hosting Graves' disease. And I think I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story, and the story is going to scare you and upset you probably. And, you know, you need to have really done lesson 1 before you watch this movie, okay? Because I don't want it to ruin the cure for you so that you go, oh my God, this doesn't cure it, you know, I'm stuck, you know, and you just decide to forget the whole thing, you know, which is possible. But hey, you know, you need to hear this stuff because if you're going to cure this thing, you need to know how to cure it, right? That's what it's about. You see, the thing about miracle cures, you know, what you're doing here is a miracle. There's no doubt about it. I mean, people don't cure Graves' disease. They have it for life. You know, they just go on and on and on with it. And it's a horrible, disfiguring, crippling disease. So curing it is not normal. Okay, it's not the usual. This isn't just like the way things go, you know. Things go very badly for people. And they're not going to go badly for you. You know, you're going to have a miracle. And the thing is that when you do this, you're going to understand miracle cures. And miracle cures are what your doctor is going to say, you know, and what Dr. Weil wrote about. Like Dr. Weil wrote a book called Spontaneous Healing. And it's about that. It's about miracle cures. And actually in the U.S. they call it spontaneous remission. You know, when you were listening to Lesson 1, you heard Elizabeth, and I guess in New Zealand they just write previous exposure. You know, so we do cure shows with people from all over the world. They call in. It's one thing that's good. There's good phone connections now to all over. People can call from India and whatever to do a cure show. Wow. It's pretty wonderful, isn't it, you know, that we can all do this together. You know, we can connect like this. You see, this is what's curative, is we're connecting with each other. It's that you're making a connection with us. But anyway, it is not normal to cure Graves' disease. And see, the difference, though, is that when most people get a miracle cure, like Bernie Siegel wrote a book about miracle cures also. He's another MD. He was a cancer surgeon. And he wrote about a guy who went in for his cancer tests, and they said, we have to do all this work with you, and you're going to have to be in the hospital for, you know, several weeks or whatever it was, you know. And, you know, you're going to have to test you and then operate and so on. And he said, well, I can't do that because I have to plant my garden. It's spring, you know, I have to plant my garden. See, this was a miracle cure. You know, he just went home, planted his garden. He didn't do any medical treatment. Well, 7 years later, as Bernie Siegel writes, the guy was still planting his garden. You know, and this is not the story that's going to scare and upset you, by the way. This is just a story about it's a typical spontaneous remission is what they call it. So when you go back for another test on Graves' disease and they don't find it, or it starts to disappear and finally does, at some point they'll probably write something like spontaneous remission. They're not going to know what happened. And if you tell them, you know, your doctor may enjoy your story, but they're not going to write all the stuff you say down on your medical report. They're just going to write a word or two, you know, that other doctors will understand. Probably they're not going to write, joined the cure drive. Once again, you know, joined the cure drive and cured it. You know? Probably they're not going to write that. So, too bad, but that's been the way it's gone so far. See, but now you're going to understand miracle cures. Because what you're being trained to do by pulling yourself along on this thread of signals, this thread of good feelings, you're being trained to do at will and intentionally what other people do without really knowing how they do it. Like, you're going to know how you did it. Like the guy who went back and planted his garden, if you asked him, how'd you cure your cancer? He said, oh, well, I planted my garden and it cleared up. He isn't going to say that. That's nuts. He's just going to say, I don't know, but I just didn't have time to get treated and the cancer disappeared, or something like that. He doesn't know. You're going to know how you cured Graves' disease. So if you get it back, you're going to be able to do it again. And you're also going to be able to stop hosting it. And I guarantee you, after you get your last medical test in the series, I can pretty much guarantee you you're still going to be hosting the disease. So, you know, but you will know how to continue past that point. That's what you're being trained to do, to get yourself to and beyond a negative medical test on Graves' disease.